Today's guest is a transformational life healer and expert Chinese medicine practitioner. Her purpose is to bring you back to yourself, for you to feel in balance and aligned across your mind, body, soul. She uses numerous techniques in her sessions, both online and in person. Her work is personalised to your specific needs to transform you into your balance. Her name is Carolyn Sykes. She's got the most beautiful Welsh accent, and I am really honoured that not only is she joining me in today's podcast episode, but she also came into the Mavenhaven community to offer a masterclass for our members on the menopause, the 5 elements, and being neurospicy. If you would like to get access to the replay of that masterclass, it is now available in the Treasure Trove, which you can contact me to find out more about. And her and I are actually going to go live on Facebook after this session has aired so that you can ask us questions. I'll make sure that there is a link to that somewhere near wherever you are listening or watching today's episode. For now, enjoy. You are listening to Adulting with Ebony. Season 7 brings together neurodiversity, human design and embodiment so that Gen X or millennial misfits and late diagnosed neurospices become empowered, embodied and fully expressed. This is the show where I actively encourage you to feel your feelings rather than think them. Glow up, not grow up, and become full of yourself. Because who the fuck else should you be full of? Each week I have real and raw conversations about what it takes to be fully resourced and have happy, healthy, intimate relationships as a dopamine deficient adult wanting to create a better future by being the change that you want to see in the world. I am your host, Ebony Allard, aka Ebony Alchemy, a late diagnosed ADHDer, combined type and Asperger's in case you like specifics, artist, mystic, and self-actualization facilitator. I'm an international award-winning multiple brain integration technique master coach with special interest in embodied human design for neurodivergents. I've been in the personal development, creativity and entrepreneurship spaces all of my life, and as a 5/2 emotional manifesting generator with a left angle cross of distraction, I am here to help you know what to trust and what to tune out. Each week I share relatable, practical ways that mean you get to take less responsibility for more reward and safely remove your camouflage for more belonging, acceptance and fulfillment. Ready? Let's go. Hey,
Hello.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. I have been talking to people about this conversation and being like, I'm only having her on because I want to ask her loads of questions for myself.
Brilliant.
So, first of all, we've known each other for a really long time, but we haven't seen each other.
That's right.
Ages. And so much has changed in that time. It's almost like, we moved from one section of our lives, I suppose, into another. And the last time I saw you was pre-baby, pre-motherhood.
Yep. Yeah, in the maiden phase.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely feel like back then, even though I haven't birthed children, I have moved, like I was in my kind of mother phase in my business at that point, and I was really, that's how it felt. And I feel like I'm moving, I feel like a lot of my business babies, if you like, or the way that I work with my clients is really shifting into this, watching them be adults and supporting them rather than mothering them, and really allowing them a greater level of authority. And a lot of my journey since we last saw each other has been about knocking myself off of a pedestal and becoming aware of the places where I was being a savior in human design language, being a 5, and really rescuing people and creating spaces where I was needed,
Yeah. I think I've kind of gone through a bit of a journey of that as well with my acupuncture patients, and really kind of moving more towards empowering the patients, because ultimately they're their own healers. But it's gone from them needing me to me empowering them.
How do you think, or have you seen any change then with your own element? Like, for me, I feel like when I go and work with acupuncture or five elements or have any of this work done, what I needed then and what comes up now has really, really shifted and changed. And I don't know whether that's life, age, the world, both, like all of that. Have you noticed any shift for yourself in kind of what support you need elementally?
No, but I've noticed the shift in me through having the treatment.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's an ever deepening thing. Like there is no end to it. So I know that I'm a fire.
Yeah.
And it's like, going for acupuncture initially, finding out your element, getting some treatment on your element, you start to feel more like you and more in balance, but it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
And it's like this ever deepening relationship with yourself. But you know more about yourself. So you're having more of a conscious relationship with yourself. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that. For me, I've worked with many different acupuncturists and the elements over the years. I actually haven't found anyone here. And so it's still something I do when I go back to England. And part of that is the language of wanting to be really specific about the things that I'm saying in my body and not having that capacity here. Whereas, interestingly, with other sorts of body work, I feel like I don't need language. But if you're going to stick needles in me,
let's make sure we're on the same page.
And I think it's the surprise element, right? Not that I don't trust them, because I don't think they need language. I think they can listen to my pulse and see how I move.
Yeah. So like, if the more 5 element they are, the more they've kind of, because this is what I've noticed with myself as a practitioner, is developing this skill.
Yeah.
It's almost like when I first qualified, I was trying too hard to see everyone's element and I couldn't see the wood for the trees. So I stopped trying to see it. And I just treated them as if I was just doing TCM. And I just treated their symptoms and listened to what they were saying. But over time, the elements started becoming more and more evident to me, because it's an energetic thing. So you develop your skill of color. So you see color, but it's more like, for example, once there was this lady. So when COVID was happening and you had the rules and everything, we had to make the patients wait in their car. And then we'd go and get them for their appointment rather than everyone congregated in the reception area. Yeah. So I went to get this lady one day and she was standing next to a car. I'd never met her before, but I saw this flash of green go across her face. And it was like, oh, wood. And that was my instant first impression. So we have color, we have the sound. So the sound of your voice, even if you're speaking a different language, there's definitely like a tone. Like I find your voice very singing. Yeah. It's a singing tone. And the emotion. So it's like how we feel when we're around you. Yeah. And then the most subtle of all is the odor. And the odor is the hardest one to find now, because everyone wears like chemicals and perfume and, the clothing detergents and things, which all mask the smell. But the more advanced you become, the more you can. It's like that first flash of green. It's like a whiff. You just get a whiff and then you got it. What you smell is my my sense in human design, and mine. And it's such a good indicator for me. And one of the things I've really used consciously to, how do I put this? I became aware that one of the ways that I was dopamine seeking was through food. And so I consciously worked with, okay, well, what are some other ways that I could support that need? And one of the ways is incense. And so last Christmas, my family asked me, what do you want? We do like one present each. And we used to do that. No, we stopped this year. Nobody would allow me to do it this year, but I thought it worked really well. It's really great. I asked for a year's supply of incense, and I got really good quality incense off, and so many different scents and flavors and like things I really love.
And so because I had this kind of plethora and never felt like, oh, I've got to be really stingy with it. And so sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, I'll put on something and like clear the space or change it. And
Yeah,
it
nice.
really, really impacted my relationship with my sense of smell. And
Yeah.
when I can't smell everything, then I know that I need to spend some more time alone and that I'm too full of
Mm,
everybody else and too full of my clients and everything. And
yeah.
also I have days where I can smell everything, hormone days where I'm like, why does everything smell of bins and sweat? Um, I also know
Yeah, it can
it's
be a curse as well as a blessing, can't it?
but for me, I really come to see the pattern that those days are the hormonal shift
Mm,
in my cycle that I'm,
yeah,
yeah, like I can pinpoint exactly where I am in my cycle by the days where everything smells.
amazing. So just out of interest, what days of the cycle is it that you get heightened smell?
Um, so like 19. So as my progesterone starts to drop as I move,
Mhm.
which is the hardest part for me, and actually one of the things I wanted to talk to you about and being
Mm,
supported. Um, so a lot of my listeners are neurodiverse in some way, and for me, late diagnosed, had absolutely no idea it was a thing. Also had absolutely no idea that PMDD was a thing.
mm,
And it is something I have experienced for 30 years of my life. And
mm.
30 years of my life, I just knew there were 2 days a month where I have to sit on my hands, as I put it,
Yeah,
and not believe the mirror, not believe my brain, not believe the thoughts, like really, like not cut all my hair off. Like I
yeah.
have 2 days, and they used to be, um, and they still are roughly day 20 to 23.
Okay.
Most often 22 and 20 or to 24. So like that little bit where, and I used to describe it to an ex-boyfriend because I need a lot of reassurance in those 2 days. But I
Mm,
used to explain it that it's like, he's like, nothing's changed overnight. And I'm like, no, everything's changed overnight. Like my entire body is not the same as it was the day before. Like it's like someone changes my
yeah,
entire orientation overnight. And I've got no idea which way it is up. And I don't know that I can believe anything. And I knock into walls and nothing's just like time and space aren't what they were the day before. And I've come to understand that it's 2 days a month
okay.
and shift back into um, normality, I suppose. And so
Yeah,
that I'm really interested in to see if you've got any insight into
okay.
that and PMDD. And then the other thing is at the age of 43, and I had terrible, terrible, really intense, long, heavy periods as a young woman, which
Mhm.
was my family. I spent most of my late 20s, early 30s, really working with my body, with my womb, with the elements, with my cycle, and have been fortunate to have a very regular cycle since that work
Yeah,
and very, very consistent. I now have a 28 to 29 day cycle with a
amazing.
4-day bleed, 2 days heavy, 2 days not, every single month. And in the last 6 months, it's moving to a 27, 28, and I am in complete denial.
Yeah,
I might be heading towards things changing. And so I wanted to
yeah.
talk about that as well.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot. So what do you
Well,
want
we'll
to know
see.
first?
PMDD,
Yeah.
those who have no idea what I'm talking about, but who have recognized perhaps the symptoms I just described of
Mm,
feeling very wobbly. For me, it also led to suicidal ideation, not wanting to be alive, finding what I see in the mirror completely distorted. I would
yeah,
believe that I'd put on a massive amount of weight
yeah,
overnight, the kind that isn't possible. And so that's why I say sit on my hands, because I'd be like, logically, I know it can't have changed that much.
yeah.
Yeah, how common is it? Have you heard it before? Do you know of any links to neurodivergence, that kind of thing?
Okay. So I'm starting to hear of it more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And in Chinese medicine, we don't see it the same way. You know this. We don't see it the same way as the West. And so we don't even really talk about hormones that much.
Right.
Everything's about patterns, and everything's about being in alignment with seasons and, you know, the elements and everything like that. But as you were talking there and you were describing those days in your cycle, what I was getting was like a visual. Okay. So because we don't really talk too much about hormones, doesn't mean they're not involved, but we think more of yin and yang.
Yeah.
So like the estrogen is the yin and the progesterone is more yang.
Yeah.
And when we look at the 28-day cycle, we have this graph.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like the estrogen going up and then peaking in the middle and then coming back down. Yeah. And then it's like it goes upside down on top of each other. So you got one going up and the other coming down. So what I think is happening is when you get those 2 days, it's where those two lines are crossing. Yeah. So that's the bit where you don't know which way's up and which way's down.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Absolute sense. Yeah.
So I think because you're so aware and you're so in tune with yourself, you already know what you need to do. And it's like on those days, you just need to almost like shut the world out and just go within and to just feel and heal and give yourself the self-care that you know that you need. And then, you know, I talk about it a lot with manifesting as well. Mm-hmm. You know, that's not the time to be thinking about your goals, is it?
It's really interesting because the visual that I got as I'm talking to you about it, because we're talking elements, which is fascinating. It's like, I know it's my autumn, but you know those days in autumn where it's freakishly sunny and then there's like a downpour and it's windy.
Yeah, you've got both.
And you've got everything happening all at once, right? And you're like, if you go out, you have to wear layers and like, you know, you put it on and then you take it off and you put it on. And it's a lot of effort to be out in that for me.
Exactly.
And it's much easier just to stay at home and wait for it to pass.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I would call being more yin.
Yeah.
So I have this whole kind of concept, which I call be more yin. And it's like, I know not everyone understands what that means, but for me, I can't say it any different because there's the being part, which is the being rather than doing. Yeah. And then be more yin. And so the yin is all about that going within and being still and, you know, just kind of like moving towards whatever it is we're experiencing, we're moving towards it and embracing it rather than trying to like push through it and past it and beyond it.
And for sure that yin space is listening, right? And
yes.
The difference between I'm going to go out in the rain, I'm going to go out in that weather and try and get somewhere where you're going to be fighting it, right? Yeah. And just going out in it and watching and listening, because if you mean, like for me, I'm imagining being a kid and I go out in that weather and I'm just like, wow, like I could just be in awe of it. That orientation makes such a difference to how we experience it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like all of this applies to all kind of times of the month as well, to all like people of all ages and everything, because it's like what I would say is like pushing through it and not acknowledging the beauty of it is the masculine energy more. And then being in that, like just being present, being in more of a childlike awe and just going with it rather than fighting against it. To me, that's more feminine. And again, it's being more yin. So it's just kind of like receiving the moment as it is.
I'm really curious then, because you said earlier, sound, smell, and then element. Is the element as part of that? Is that how you find the element?
Yeah, those are the skills that we develop to help us diagnose the element. So you've got colour, sound, emotion, and odour.
Colour, sound, emotion, and odor. Okay. And if you then work with that, I have an idea in my head of what I am.
Yeah.
And if a person discovers that about themselves, does that stay or does that change over life?
Yeah, it stays.
Okay.
So it can heal. You can be a really out of balance. So going back to the question you asked me earlier about the changes I've noticed in myself, when I look back at my younger self, I was very out of balance fire, whereas now I'm a much more balanced fire. So there's this like unhealed version of it and then a more healed version of it where you get like experience more of the superpowers of that element. But then also if you go through any stress, trauma, extreme tiredness, whatever, the first thing it's going to hit is that element. And so that's how I know I need more treatment or more self-care, is if that element starts to get a bit out of balance again.
So, to help me with specifics,
Mm-hmm.
I believe I'm also a fire. What would you
Okay.
say?
Well, I would have to spend a bit more time with you and ask you the relevant questions and things. Okay. From knowing you, yeah, definitely you've got fire. Now we're all of them.
Yes.
As well. But I was kind of feeling more earth.
That's really interesting. That's my voice, right? And the smell. That's which you can't do right here. That's really interesting to me. Okay, so this is fascinating to me because one of the reasons why I now spend a lot more time in Spain is because what doesn't work for me is the damp.
Yes.
And as a earthy fire, that makes sense. So whenever I go for acupuncture, I get a lot of I've forgotten the word for it, but when you light
moxa.
Moxa so much, and I need, like, I could just be like, just give me more. I need so much of it. And so, but then when people are like, well, you're so fiery already, why would you need more? Like, from an Ayurvedic perspective or a balancing perspective, why would you need more heat? And actually hearing you say the earth thing, that makes much more sense for me.
Yeah.
Where that might be and why.
This is why I love the 5 elements so much. For me, it's the best system I've ever found, because you can have a lot of fire, but it's all about the organs. So if your spleen is cold and damp and you've got a bit of kidney yang deficiency, you could still have a lot of fire in your heart, but those other organs need the warmth, which is why you could still take more.
Yeah. And this makes real sense. And so because we are all of them, as you're saying, and what I love for folks who are neurodivergent in some way, very often we experience synesthesia and we have a different relationship and a different way of interocepting than allistic or neurotypical people. And so being able to have these conversations around color and sound and element and emotion makes it an entirely different experience for those who want to talk about their health but who have white coat syndrome, which is what I do. As soon as I go into a doctor or someone in the Western medical profession, I shut down, my blood pressure goes up, like I can't articulate. But if we're having a conversation about color and sound and element,
it puts it in a completely different context. And I think there's an element of intuition in that. You know, I mean, you've got to trust your practitioner, and depending on the modality they're practicing, there might not be enough knowledge or compassion there for what you need.
Yeah, I think it's one of the ways that I learned to interocept more and to have a deeper body awareness and understanding of the patterns and what was going on was by I actually used to go to a acupuncture school and be with their students because I loved hearing the conversation as well.
Yeah, with the teachers.
So fascinating. Like I love being really big in that way. It was really, really fun for me because I love to learn. But it also, the questions they were asking then helped demystify it all for me and like allowed me to drop further into my body. And one of the comments that you just reminded me when you said it earlier was that my top and my bottom, like there's almost a line, I had like this corset line under the bottom of my ribs along the meridian, where the top was almost too hot and the bottom was too cold or damp.
Yeah.
And so much of the work that we would do and the healing that they would help me with is like smudging that line and they're stopping there from being such a divide.
Yeah, exactly. And like, because the bottom half, and that is where, like the kidneys are lower down and the spleen is obviously, the heart is above. And so a lot of people can find themselves feeling quite ungrounded in life because all their energy is kind of up here. And that can be caused by heat in the heart, and that can just be caused by, too much thinking and busy modern living. So we really want to ground, but then it's like those organs underneath that are cold, we're giving them the moxa, and then you might worry about the fire that you've already got, and is that getting too much heat? But the yin and the yang transform into each other as well. So at its zenith, yang will become yin again, and yin will become yang. So you can't overdo it. If you know what you're doing, I don't think you can overdo it.
Okay, I love that. And so then from your perspective, as one moves through the cycles of life and these physical changes, moving into that second question.
Yeah.
Is it just a case of, in fact, I would say from this conversation, it's very interesting for me because I'm like, why am I anxious about this? Like, why am I preempting this next phase of my life with a level of anxiety that I've never really experienced before around shifting or changing? But I actually think it's just that I've become so comfortable in this. Like, I know where I'm at, I know my cycle, I know all the patterns. There's I think the anticipation or the worry is that it's just the part of me that doesn't really like change, you know?
Yeah. Again, there's two sides to this. Well, there's probably more, but the two sides I'm thinking of. Number one is like, the programming, media, the negative expectations. So many women are coming to me scared of going into the menopause because of what they're hearing in the media.
Yeah.
And I understand that that is some people's reality, but that's only through a lack of awareness and knowledge of what's really going on.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, for me, I see the whole process as deeply spiritual, and that ultimately the spiritual path is a continual letting go of what we know, a continual opening towards mystery. And so that's what this is. It's like the menopause is the final gateway before death. And death is the ultimate letting go, where we let go completely into the mystery. And so menopause is your practice period for that.
I think what it is then, like, and this is really helpful just to have this conversation, is that, so I have this as a Sagittarius moon who may or may not have commitment issues that she's looking at. I very often have this conversation with myself where I'm like, this is and going through my Uranus half return, right? Like, I'm at my midlife, right? Like, this is the middle of life. So the idea that menopause, or that menopause is the slide towards death, feels like, no, there's still so much more to go.
Yeah.
And again, the media has done this number on us of like, women become invisible at 50. There's nothing more exciting. You're going to have no juice left. Like all of that, which I would really love to change. I'd really love to model and to lift up these conversations where
me too.
to have a whole other half of life that's even more brilliant than the first half.
It should be. That's how it is. This is the second spring. So in the East, it's the wiser women that are respected. They're revered. They've got real life experience. They've got real gifts and gems to share. And I heard somewhere, I don't know how true it is, but I heard somewhere that in the East, their birthdays aren't celebrated until their 60s.
Wow.
And so this kind of idea is very Western, that, that we're losing it as we age, when actually we're gaining it. And it's like, when we think about the maiden, the mother, I don't like the word crone. I like to say maiden, mother, wise woman.
Yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't want to be the maiden again. Why do we worship the maiden? She doesn't know what she's doing. She's suffers. Yes, she's got youth and beauty, but there's a real beauty that comes, from behind the eyes as the soul wisdom comes through. Isn't it?
100%. And I also, there's this, in advertising, in confectionery, in all of these different places, they have the bliss point. And when I'm working with people around attraction and what makes people really attractive, it is bliss pointing, right? It's like having a complex personality. And I think so many women are taught that you need to be one thing, like, who are you, what are you, and you need to pick a thing and lead with that. And the truth is, and so much of our work is around helping women to reclaim their range and to not feel like their range is too much or dangerous or unwieldy or any of that. And the thing is that with age, we grow into our range and we own it all. And I think that is like, that's something I'm excited about not needing to prove anything or rush or, you know, any of that, just to be in that complete
and to completely stay in your own lane, you know, and that we all have all the seasons at different times. So even though it's winter now, I always love the winter. The winter to me is like my internal summer. I just love it. I thrive in January. January is always my best month of the year. And I just feel so, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but except to say it's my summer, you know? So yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to say about that. It's gone. It'll come back.
So when people come to work with you around this stuff, what is, so you said earlier, it's not like people might come to you around hormones and you're not necessarily working with the hormones in that way.
Yeah.
Is there something that people should be aware of or be looking for before they come and see you? And if people have never done anything like this before, but are listening and are like, this sounds like a really interesting way to heal, to reconnect with my body, to find that thing, but I'm a bit scared.
Yeah.
Like, that's the bit that I want to get over. It's like, I know my people, I know that they're going to be going, well, what can I be prepared with? What can I look at first? And then also, what should they expect from working either with you or with a practitioner in this way around, I guess, hormonal stuff or this shift in life?
Yeah. So like, we don't see it technically through the lens of hormones, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to. So we can speak, like, you can speak one language, we can speak another, and we can meet in the middle. Okay. But I don't know that there's anything you do to prepare. So a lot of people come, for example, because I do a lot of work online, because, you know, what I do is more than just acupuncture. But a lot of people, for example, will come for acupuncture, they're scared of needles. So first and foremost, it's a lengthy consultation. You know, you can just settle in, get comfortable in the conversation like we're having now. Things start to shift through the conversation itself. What most people tell me is they've never felt so heard, never felt so listened to, never felt so inspired. And, you know, it is, like it says in A Course in Miracles, a miracle is a shift in perception. So they're already shifting their perception in the consultation. And then if they're really scared of needles, I'll just pick a point where there isn't any acupuncture points, like the top of the knee, for example, where it's quite fleshy. And I'll just put a needle in there first, just to show doesn't hurt. And that's that bit out the window, fear gone. And then, you know, and then they'll have the most amazing experience through the treatment itself. But then if they're working with me online, there's kind of three elements to it. So I see it like a pyramid. And you've got acupuncture or Chinese medicine. And then you've got the meditation, which is the being more yin. And then you've got this transformational element, which transforms you and takes you through your second spring. And that's more like coaching, but it's all about feminine energetics and feminine power and strengthening boundaries and, you know, and miraculous perception and all of this. And so it's not like, oh, we do this in this month and that in that month and that in that month. It's all kind of blended in. It's all completely led by the client, you know, so you'll never get what you're not ready for.
Okay.
That makes sense.
No, it totally does. And so you said earlier, and you've said a couple of times, TCM. So I just want people who are like me and who are can't listen to anymore because they're like, what is TCM? Just tell us what TCM.
Okay, I'm going to give you a really good hack now as well, all right? So TCM is traditional Chinese medicine. So if you went to a hospital in China, that's what you'd get. And so it's similar to Western medicine in that sense, but it's not, because it's more holistic and looks at it differently. But it's that medical kind of, you come with a headache, we fix your headache type of thing. And then the 5 element side is more emotional and spiritual and even like psychiatry, almost like people say, I feel like I'm in therapy. You know, it's emotional, psychological, and spiritual. And it's much more on that energetic side. And I do both. Okay. But if somebody's thinking, I might want to, you know, try this particular modality, they could go on Google, say they are experiencing migraines, and you type into Google migraines, and then you put TCM at the end. Okay. What you're going to get then is all the Chinese medicine sites coming up, explaining what headaches are from our perspective. If you just go on Google and type in migraines, you'll get all the Western ones.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I love that.
TCM will give you more information before you go and see a practitioner, which could be the thing you could do to prepare before you go to see a practitioner.
Fantastic. I love that, because I know that people listening to this are going to really like being able to have a little insight and taking away that kind of what's going to happen thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the 5 elements and the Chinese medicine way of looking at things is actually a really neurodiverse way of understanding, because everything's linked to everything else. And the Western hierarchical system, or the really honed into, oh, you've got a headache, well, just look at your head then, rather than
exactly.
You know, you've got this whole rest of the body that's attached to your head. And one of my favorite things actually about the journey with acupuncture and Chinese medicine, or 5 elements, is going to see somebody and having a particular pain here, and having the conversation, and then them helping me to understand that's because I'm using this part of my body way more, or standing funny, or like it comes from something else. It's not, for such a long time I was like, there must be something wrong there, because that's where the pain is, rather than understanding that it's referred from something else. And I think that for me is such a really helpful way of using this modality to see yourself as a whole, and to recognize the patterns, and to see what the causality is, right? Like how one thing affects another thing.
So let's use headaches as an example for this. Okay. So oftentimes, more often than not, headaches are linked to the liver or liver gallbladder. Okay. Wood element, not always, but mostly. And I'll give you an example of a patient I had recently. So she came in to see me with pain under her right ribs, which was liver area, vision problems, and migraines. And I treated her for three sessions, and the pain's gone away, the eyes have improved, and no more headaches. And all I've done is put needles in her feet and knees. So she's come in thinking she's going to have needles there and there. I haven't touched that. And the pain's gone, the vision's improved. And it's like, how can sticking a needle in my knee make my eyes better? Because that's the liver channel, and the liver opens into the eyes. You know?
I love it. I could talk to you all day.
Me.
I'm not. I'm going to wrap it up and move you towards the Patron part, where this season we are doing something different, and I'm going to ask you 15 quick fire questions.
Okay.
Really personal.
Yay.
Yay.
I hate small talk. I like to get deep with people straight away.
This is why I love you. I will put everything into the show notes, but for those whose curiosity is piqued now, and who may be able to come see you in person and work with some needles, or who may want to come and work with you online, where is the best place for them to come and find you and to find out more?
My website, www.raiseyourgaze.coach.
Oh, I love that. I will, as I say, make sure that I have popped that in for you.
And also social media. I'm just go by my name, Carolyn Sykes.
Okay, fantastic. Again, I'll make it really easy. Stick all the links in. Is there anything else that you want to add, or that you want to say before we wrap up and disappear?
Oh, are we not doing the 15 questions?
We will, but I'm going to pause this one.
Yeah.
And then go into the other one.
I just want to go back to the PMDD thing as well, because I kind of feel like we skimmed over that, where I said I'm seeing more of it now.
Yeah.
And so I really want to say to anyone who's experiencing that, to not be afraid, and that there is a solution. And it really ultimately comes back to this being more yin. Because if we think about it, we've got yin and yang, okay, these two aspects of life, and they show up in everything, in night and day, in winter and summer, cold and hot, you know, it's everywhere. And so when we're just on all the time, thinking, doing, working, you know, that's too yang. Even though we sleep at night, we're completely unconscious when we're asleep. So you can kind of like discount that. How much time in your day do you spend being aware of stillness and just being in that kind of opposite mode, which is required for balance? And ultimately, if we can bring more of the yin back, it will create more balance naturally, and lots of ailments will naturally heal. And so, yeah, that's just what I wanted to offer there. Because I think the reason we're seeing more and more of it is because of the heightened stress of modern living. And, you know, social media plays a big part in that and everything. And it just adds to this. It's almost like your brain becomes like a motorway, doesn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's really linked to disconnect from circadian rhythm,
Yeah.
from the seasonal, you know, all of those rhythms.
Yeah.
Particularly in human design speak, in my world, I've got a lot of people who are undefined in the root. And so they experience this pressure to keep moving all of the time. And they find it very difficult to rest.
Yeah, that's it.
Or to move with they don't necessarily have a consistent sense of their own rhythm, and therefore need to really look to the wider rhythms of night and day and the seasons and all of that. And again, it can be very easy to override that when you're feeling a sense of pressure.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people, you know, I've worked a lot with shadow work around it. And I think these two things are linked, right? In as much as, coming back to that piece that we were talking about with age and women and all of that, if we don't value yin,
that's it,
value softness, then we're going to put that part of ourselves in the shadow. Then it does require some work and some, you know, that you said the kind of psychological element and the therapy element of talking about, you know, why is it that we aren't more restful, or that we don't honor beauty or time out or the winter?
Yeah, I love that. Yin is the most valuable, it's the most valuable, precious essence that you could know, and you already have it. You just have to choose it. And I like that you said rest. That I think that might be a really good way of kind of saying it, a different way of saying it than be more yin. Conscious rest. So like sleep is like unconscious rest, and being more yin is about conscious rest, so that you can actually enjoy it, you know, the deliciousness of rest.
For me, the other way I describe yin very often is it's being open and receptive.
It is receiving.
And so all of you know, you can't receive new ideas, creative. People often say to me, "You're so creative." I'm like, but that requires periods of very conscious yin, you know, open receptivity, because otherwise there's nowhere for new ideas or ideas to land, to be.
Correct.
And you know, tiny last bit on that, people often want more money and more love, and when they are full of yang, and particularly if you're all in your yang and the person you're in a relationship with or want to be in a relationship with is in their yang, or you're all yang and the clients you want to work with are all yang, there's no space for that connection to take place. And so very often, if we can come back, you know, open space into that yin, then people will step forward into
correct. It's like a magnetism. It pulls them forward, and so you can receive more money by being more yin. What better motivation is there than that?
Exactly. I mean, it's doing less, creating space. What else do you need?
And
Except that we do not believe it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where the self-worth comes in, the love of yourself, and all of that. And that's where the deeper work happens, is healing that.
Yeah, and for me, the reason I like modalities like this is that they help you to do that work without engaging this.
Exactly. Yeah, that would only get in the way.
Yeah, for sure. Right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.